Hey, welcome back to Splash Page, and good news! Netflix is coming out with Season 2 of the death-defying, time-bending dark comedy, Russian Doll, on April 20th, starring Natasha, Lyonne, and Charlie Barnett. And I'm very excited for this show to come back out, because it was hit or miss there for a minute. We didn't know if we'd even get a Season 2. And anyone who's watched this show knows how hard it is to describe to someone who hasn't watched it exactly what it's about. I guess the easiest way to say it's about a game programmer living a groundhog-like life day, except that in this version we get to watch the Phil Connors character gruesomely die every time his day restarts. It's a fun show, but it's like comparing this to Groundhog Day is like comparing Dark Knight to the Adam West Batman TV show in 1966. It's the same premise, but a very different take on the subject matter. So, what's going on with this show? We'll talk a little bit philosophically, a little bit scientifically, and this is one of those shows that when you finish watching it, you're left with way more questions than when you came into it, and sometimes that could be disastrous for a show or a movie, but in this case, I think it works really well. And luckily for us, we're getting a Season 2 to give us hopefully some of those answers and probably a lot more questions. Otherwise, Season 1 on its own was a good enough closed-end story, but I feel like if we didn't get a Season 2, we'd just be left asking these questions forever and never have a true answer. It would become like one of those shows, kind of like Deadwood, that people say is a great show, but no one ever goes back to watch it all that often because you know, starting, that it's never going to end, that you're just left unsatisfied. I think Season 1 of Russian Doll did a little bit better than that. Now, I've never seen Deadwood, and I probably never will, because I know it just cuts off and doesn't end. But in this case, we get a Season 2, so who can complain? So, let's find out what are the rules of this world.
What are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules?
Dude, wouldn't it be like crazy if we were just living in a simulation of a computer game? This question has been asked so much that anytime someone asks it of me, I do the equivalent of powering down the console and just turning and walking away. But in Russian Doll, this might actually be the case. Every time Nadia dies, she wakes up again in the middle of her 36th birthday party, staring herself in the mirror. It feels eerily similar to a video game because every time you die, you go right back to the beginning of the level. Or you go right back to the top of the slide if you're gonna helter-skelter this. I think that's what that song was about, right? Maybe? I don't know. Could be a song about reincarnation. We'll have to think about that one a little bit. I'm probably wrong, as I am about most things. But in this case, it's only Nadia, and later we find out the character of Alan, who keep getting rebooted every morning. It's not everyone in the world, or if it is, we don't get to watch their characters getting rebooted every time they die. It feels like these two are just intrinsically linked together and keep dying and rebooting, and it doesn't really affect anyone else, or at least everyone else doesn't realize the effect it has on them. They're the only two keeping their memories from the prior days, or the same day, but before. It starts to get really confusing. So it's possible that in this world, this is just a simulation run by aliens or maybe a higher power set to a really hard setting where it's not easy to get to the next level, so you keep dying and ending up back at the beginning of the day or the level. But one question is this happening just to Nadia and Alan, or is this happening to everyone in the world and we're just not following their paths in this show? Does everyone relive the same day and when they die and keep coming back and reliving it? Or is this some kind of a view your life flash before your eyes kind of feeling? Like you keep reliving the same couple seconds, and maybe all 9 of these episodes are just a couple seconds long as Nadia and or maybe Alan's brain is slowly dying from the first time that they died. By the end of the season, and spoiler alert if you haven't watched Season 1 of Russian Doll, and if you haven't, I don't know why you're watching this right now, but I want to thank you for it. Nadia and Alan each individually run into versions of the other one who has no memories of their prior days and their prior meetings, and they haven't died yet. And that seems to kind of throw the whole game theory, game simulation theory out the window, because the level has changed. So if the level's changed, then maybe it isn't a simulation. Maybe this is something else. And one of those possibilities is called quantum immortality, which I'll describe in a second, but if we're going with quantum immortality here, Russian Doll is kind of playing loosely a little bit with the terms of the theory. Quantum immortality is part of a larger theory that posits multiple universes and multiple timelines. And how do these timelines get created? Well, when you come in contact with a close brush with death, the timeline diverges. In one, you live, in the other, you die. And now there are two separate timelines moving on. In the one where you live, if you come brush with death, it splits again. So in a way, there is a version of you that is theoretically, probability-wise, impossible to kill. Because every time you die, a timeline diverges, and in one of them, you're still alive. Now, you probably don't know this about me, but I am not a scientist, despite having spent many, many hours as a child in the bathtub mixing multiple shampoos in the hopes of creating an all-new super shampoo. But I don't think that actually counts. But in the version of quantum immortality that scientists talk about, you wouldn't even know that you had died, or that you had lived, or that an entire other universe had been created. The version of you that died would die, and the version of you that lived would just keep going on with your life as you knew it, not even knowing there was another universe, and probably boring people with the story about that one time you almost died. Or I guess 2 times, or 10 times, or hundreds of times. In quantum immortality, there's a good chance that at least one version of you has a story about near-miss deaths over and over and over again. And maybe that's how superheroes are created. I don't know, that could be an origin story. Listen, if scientists are allowed to say something like every time you almost die, an entire new universe starts, then I'm allowed to say something like maybe that's the origin story of all superheroes. Except one of them gets written up in scientific journals, and the other sounds like something a stoner would say who's mixed up too many of his metaphors. Either way, it sounds kind of childish to me, and very human-centric. Does every time a porpoise die, another universe opens up where that porpoise didn't die? Did it work for dinosaurs? Does it work for plants? Tell me that, scientists. How does this work? But anyway, that's quantum immortality. So if Russian Doll is based on quantum immortality, it's based on a version where every time you die, you restart that prior day and remember that whole prior day, as opposed to just continuing on with your life as it was. So it's a slightly different version of what people might call quantum immortality. Which makes me think that maybe this version of quantum immortality is more of a metaphorical torture chamber for these two people, Nadia and Alan, where some higher power or alien creature is torturing these people by making them die gruesomely and relive the last day of their lives over and over again to teach them a lesson maybe for something they've done wrong, or it could possibly just be capricious and for no reason, and they'll just continue to torture them forever until they tire of it. Maybe even making them think there's a bigger meaning when there isn't, which is a very scary thought. Listen, I'm sorry for getting so dark here, but it's hard not to when you're talking about a show where the two main characters gruesomely die in every episode and then try to figure it out. But we continue on. Also, quantum immortality doesn't quite hold up when we get to the end of the first season and Nadia and Alan meet versions of the other ones who haven't died yet. Because that's no longer resetting the universe, that's changing the timeline, that's changing the rules and changing the game. It's a literal multiverse jumping. Which, can we go off topic for a second and just talk about how cool it is that I could just say the word multiverse and everyone knows what that means? Do you remember a time when you would say multiverse and people would go, huh? And then you'd have to explain it to them, and then they'd look at you like you were a loser explaining science based on comic books. And now you could just say the word multiverse and everyone just understands. It's very, very cool. Though it is sad to think that based on the multiverse theory, there's a version of this world where nobody knows what the multiverse is and we still have to explain it to them. Okay, I know this is going off topic a lot now, but based on the multiverse theory, there's an infinite number of infinite possibilities. Is there a universe where there is no multiverse? And if so, how would that affect that universe not being able to communicate with the other verses? Okay, I've even annoyed myself. Let's get back to the topic. If Nadia and Alan can find a way to die and reset themselves to the same moment, each meeting versions of the other one who either lost those shared memories or hasn't even died yet, then quantum immortality is out the door. It's no longer a mathematical chance that you either die or keep on living depending on the universe you created by either living or dying. But now it's either some kind of game program set up to torture or teach these two people, or maybe a religion-based deity trying to teach, or I guess also torture, both of these people. But them meeting versions of each other with no shared memory, while another version of the other person is also existing with those shared memories in the past, or I guess not the past, but the prior, that's not quantum immortality anymore. This is now someone outside of the system setting up a situation to torture these two people. Or at least they're setting up the system for some reason or another. Wow, that got confusing quick. But that's not the only confusing thing in this show. Sometimes when Nadia resets, everything at the party is the same as it always was, until some incident changes what happens. But at other points, she resets into a party where there are less people or fewer objects, or just her friend dancing by herself and not thinking it's anything weird. And some things stay the same, but other things, like certain fruits, continue to age as Nadia and Alan relive the same day over and over and over again. So while no time is passing for them, time is still passing for certain fruits, at least. So if fruits continue to age, at least in one way or another, does everyone else in this world continue to age outside of Nadia and Alan? Do they continue to age even though they're restarting their day over and over again? If Nadia dies every day for another 20 years, will she be returning to her 36th birthday with everyone in their early 60s? A little heavier, maybe gray hair, balding? Will anyone even notice? Will anyone there even think it's weird? Russian Doll's story seems to be at least partially hinged on fate. We have these two characters who are intrinsically and so far unexplainably tied to each other. Every time one of them dies, so does the other, and they both restart their days again in front of separate mirrors. Now, whether or not you believe in fate, at least as it's been portrayed in the ancient religions as an entire life preordained, the characters of Nadia and Alan are definitely tied to each other in some way or another, and as far as I know, we're complete and total strangers at the beginning of this series. Now, every time one of them dies, so does the other. Is that just happenstance? Is that the universe setting them up to die at the same time? Or is that one of these characters taking the lead, and whenever they die, the other one has to die? Or is there no causation, and anytime either one of them dies, the other one dies? It is possible that both of them control the other's fate, that whenever one of them decides to kill themselves, the other one would also die, which would actually make this a little less frightening because it would leave some room, however briefly, for destiny and even free will. But it's also possible that whatever has set up this crazy situation has decided when to kill each of our characters and how at any given time, which then becomes even more frightening. The possibility that when Alan decides to kill himself, it might not even be his choice, but the simulation maker's choice to have him kill himself, taking out all free will and all destiny and leaving only fate. I like to think that there's at least some free will here, otherwise there's no meaning behind this show and everything is preordained and it doesn't matter what our characters do. So we have to try to figure out why these two people are tied together, and hopefully season 2 will answer at least that question, or at least start to answer that question. So even in this world of resetting timelines, we're not even sure if there's room for free will in the lives of our characters. And we also don't know if this is happening to anyone else across the planet or everyone else across the planet, or if it's just Alan and Nadia for some strange, as yet unknown reason. Season 1 of Russian Doll ends with both of our main characters in slightly different versions of the same metaphor. I'm sorry, parade. Parade that is definitely a metaphor for something. Probably. But a metaphor for what? There's obviously an element of Halloween in this parade, and also the feeling of Dia de la Muerta, the Mexican festival for reuniting the living with the dead. So by the end of the season, it's possible that both Nadia and Alan have fixed whatever it is they were trying to fix, and that they've now reunited their souls with their bodies and have gotten back to their original timeline. It's also possible that this parade is bringing them out of purgatory and into the land of the dead, whether they've fixed it and continue to live, or fixed it and move on to the other realm, whatever that may be. Throughout the season, Nadia has had many interactions with the homeless man leading the parade, who goes by the name Horse, and was described by one of the series' co-creators, Leslie Headland, as the embodiment of the goat god Pan, who was the god of chaos. In one such meeting, he offers to cut Nadia's hair, and she allows him. She had been keeping her hair because her mother loved it so much. In another meeting, she gives her the Krugerrand that was her literal inheritance. Every one of her meetings with Horse, there's a little bit more letting go of who she was in the past. So maybe this show is about cleansing, being able to let go of those emotional burdens that hold you down and force you to do the same things over and over again, even though you know they won't work for you because they've never worked for you any time in the past when you've done them. And maybe it's about realizing that at least part of what's holding you down is yourself, and the only way to move forward is to drop the emotional burdens like the proverbial albatross. Or maybe it's about aliens running a video game. So, with Season 2 of Russian Doll quickly coming up on us, we get to relive all the thrills of Season 1 and see what Season 2 has in store. But what answers can we hope to find? Based on the previous season, I'm going to guess we're going to find a lot more questions than we will answers. But hopefully we'll at least start to figure out what's going on here and why Nadia and Alan are so intrinsically intertwined. But until then, let me know what you thought of Russian Doll. What are your fan theories? And what are your hopes and dreams for Season 2? Until that comes out, I'm Andrew, this is Splash Page, and I'll see you next time. Hey Sean, I hear we have a new giveaway.
Absolutely. Right now we are giving away toys from Vox Machina.
Wow.
The amazing D&D inspired Amazon Prime show. We are giving away 2 toys. The first is a Vax toy, and the second is a Percy toy. And we will be giving them away once we hit 2,500 subscribers.
That is very cool. Now, I know we've done giveaways before. Just to confirm, I can't win these, right?
You cannot win these.
All right.
But anyone that wants to win them, just make sure you subscribe to our channel and leave a comment on this or any of our videos, and you'll be entered to win for free.
Good luck to you all.